For those of you familiar with the work of SpaceX Vision and his remarkable animations, you may recognize this. This is a Starship Space Station, or a concept of one, and even though there's nothing official about it, it gives you an idea of just the vast amount of volume that's available in Starship that could be used for a private space station in the future. We're talking about 1,100 cubic meters, or roughly the same as the entire ISS. Actually, a little bit more than that. In a single launch, it seems that this would be a perfect solution if you could put something like this inside the fairing of Starship. That having been said, though, a proposal very similar to this, based on Starship, was actually submitted to NASA in competition with a variety of other companies that put forward their own proposals for private space stations, and they lost. This got very little media attention, especially compared to the Human Landing System contract that was brought up for lawsuits and challenges with the Government Accounting Office and all of that, whereas SpaceX quietly lost this particular proposal to Blue Origin, but more importantly, to Sierra Space. And had it not been for Sierra Space, I'm pretty certain Blue Origin would not have won this contract. But is that really the point? Look at the amount of volume you have at your disposal inside the fairing of Starship, and you can put it all up in one launch. Why would this not have been approved by NASA? But it wasn't. 3 other proposals, however, were. And some of the proposals that were accepted were far less ambitious. However, they were at least put forward by companies with a great deal of experience when it comes to private space stations. Nanoracks was in charge of a particular project in conjunction with Lockheed Martin and Voyager Space, working on a commercial space station called Starlab. Now, this is only going to have a volume of 340 cubic meters, or 3/8 that of the International Space Station. It generates about 60 kilowatts of power. It has a Canadarm or something similar to that, but really it's kind of like International Space Station minus, although at least it does have an inflatable module attached to it. And as I said, it involves companies that have a great deal of experience in building space stations. As a matter of fact, that's all Nanoracks has really worked on for many years. But all that having been said, how the hell did NASA select a company like Blue Origin as opposed to SpaceX? I mean, it's not that like Blue Origin has any sort of extensive experience in orbit, or indeed that they've been working on space stations for the vast majority of their company's existence. That really hasn't been the focus of what they've been working on. They've been working on rockets like New Shepard and New Glenn, and almost everything you're looking at right now is Sierra Space's work. And granted, Sierra Space is the primary partner in this whole endeavor, but Blue Origin is the leading interest. So why did NASA make this selection as opposed to SpaceX's Starship-based space station that could have put up, as I said, 1,100 cubic meters in one launch, something that nobody else could possibly do? Now, the contract in question is called the CLD, or Commercial LEO Destination, and really all this amounts to is a replacement for the ISS. This is an extremely important contract. It's not like this was some small news event. This is a huge event in the history of American spaceflight, and indeed for human spaceflight in general. So here's a quick review of what the contract Fact has to say. Quote, in order to cost-effectively meet U.S. long-term research and technology development needs in LEO, a robust commercial human spaceflight economy must be established, including commercial destinations and new markets to allow various customers access to a broad portfolio of commercial products and services. Development and operation of a commercial destination to provide those services will require significant private investment over many years and significant non-NASA demand to ensure long-term financial viability. So NASA envisioned the commercial LEO destinations, since renamed Commercial Destinations Free Flyer, or CDFF, to be executed in two phases. Phase 1 is a period of formulation and design by private industry in coordination with NASA of CLD capabilities to be determined to be most suitable for potential government and private sector needs. Participants are expected to achieve at least a preliminary design review level of maturity. And then Phase 2 is a potential competitive procurement under the Federal Acquisition Regulation of Services in LEO, which would include certification by NASA of the transportation and accommodations of NASA crew and payloads on a CLD. Obviously, we're in Phase 1 of this process right now, and to translate this, the whole idea is for different companies to put forward their ideas, their designs for a replacement for the ISS, and for NASA to decide which of these seems to be the best alternative. And lots of companies put forward a proposal. Now, some of these companies you probably have heard of, others you have never probably heard of, including myself, by the way. This is news to me as well. Nanoracks, of course, is an obvious one, but there's one called Space Villages Incorporated as well. Northrop Grumman put forward their proposal, Blue Origin put forward a proposal, then Orbital Assembly Corporation. They're well known for that Voyager artificial gravity station that looks like something out of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Then you have Hammond Industries, Think Orbital Incorporated, DHAS Limited, Maverick Space Systems, and then SpaceX, and finally Relativity Space. Whew! And then NASA had a color-coded system based on their various criteria for how they would judge the space station based on the goals of the station and also the probability of successful execution. And it went from the very high level of confidence, which was color-coded blue, all the way down to very low level of confidence, color-coded red. And then you had green, white, and yellow in the mix there as well. So you have all of these criteria and you have this strange color coding system all to determine who is going to be replacing the ISS in the future. And interestingly enough, Axiom Space did not put forward a proposal on this because, to be frank, they've already won. They won a previous contract to also build a free-flying space station, except built off of the ISS to eventually become free-flying, which was something that the rest of these companies did not propose. So it's kind of a different proposal to accomplish the same thing, and NASA seems to be covering themselves very thoroughly, although, as I've said, SpaceX was not included in any of this. But before we get to the SpaceX proposal, let's talk about a proposal that NASA had almost no confidence in, and that is the Orbital Assembly Corporation, what used to be known as the Gateway Foundation. The whole idea of building an artificial gravity station, again, a sort of a ring station similar to the sorts of things that we saw in 2001: A Space Odyssey, in sun-synchronous orbit, where it would be able to receive constant energy from the sun, which would be necessary in order to power something this large. Now, this proposal received a confidence rating of red, both for its business plan and its technical approach evaluation. Let's start start off with the technical side. The significant strengths of Orbital Assembly included a flight demonstration of automated on-orbit assembly of its truss, and also the fact that the station included more than 2 crew members at initial operations, with modularity to increase flexibility and growth potential for the CLD. A very ambitious plan, as most of us know. However, there were lots and lots of weaknesses. Quote, included a lack of understanding of complexities for resupply for the artificial gravity concept and large crew proposed, not addressing space environment challenges with maintaining a CLD in continuous sun-synchronous orbit. And I actually brought up this particular weakness myself in a video that I made about these guys a year or so ago. Building a large station in sun-synchronous orbit is going to be far more difficult to reach from Earth and also to resupply, but it's necessary given the design of this thing to receive constant sunlight, so it has to be in this orbit. And this is not the only problem that this station has. Quote, its proposed long-duration artificial gravity concept for CLD is incompatible with some research, and this is something I brought up as well. The whole point of building a private space station in low Earth orbit or elsewhere is to take advantage of microgravity and all of the things that you can build and all of the research that you can do in microgravity. If you have a space station that's providing artificial gravity, it completely eliminates the entire purpose of the station. Now, I do feel that eventually, if people are going to be living in orbit in large numbers for long stretches of time, they're going to need artificial gravity. There's no question of that. But in terms of providing a practical replacement for the ISS, where you can do a great deal of construction and research in microgravity, this station simply does not fit the bill. And the business plan had no strengths identified in the overall assessment from NASA. However, there were quite a number of weaknesses. Quote, a failure to provide a customer-based business strategy, a proposed management team that has no experience in funding and developing a large-scale human space system, seeking more funds from NASA than its cost during the SAA, seeking massive financing without presenting a viable financing plan. Basically all of the things that a lot of people have talked about when we're dealing with this particular company. Now, I really like what they're trying to put together. I really admire what Orbital Assembly is trying to create. A large artificial gravity station is going to be an absolute essential if we're going to be living in low Earth orbit in the future. But in terms of what NASA is looking for and what really any other private company is looking for to make something that's going to be useful to the business community and scientific research in general, this is not the station for the job, and that's why it received such low ratings. But what about SpaceX? Well, believe it or not, NASA did not give SpaceX a much higher vote of confidence than they gave Orbital Assembly. As far as the technical approach was concerned, they gave it a level of confidence rating of yellow, not much better than red. However, they listed a number of significant strengths, such as proven speed, safety and systems engineering, and vehicle manufacturing, not surprising there, its early prototype and demonstration plan for HLS or Human Landing System can increase technical maturity on some CLD systems, and a comprehensive and proven safety and risk management approach. Its strengths included more than 2 crew members at initial operations, a strong approach to future commercial communications, including the maturity of Starlink, and a proven design and strategy for rendezvous and docking. So why did this get a yellow again? Well, their weaknesses included a lack of definition on the CLD concept, a lack of definition for external payload accommodations, a lack of payload capabilities definition in its proposed conversion of Human Landing System into a CLD, and a lack of detail for scaling up from a short to a long duration capability. So essentially what they're saying is SpaceX didn't include a whole lot of details on how they were going to convert a human-rated Starship into a space station with long-term life support capabilities. That is a significant weakness, and it indicates that SpaceX may not have done their homework. However, for the business plan evaluation, it was even worse, a level of confidence rating of red. Significant strengths included rapid development of Starship and a planned orbital mission in the coming year, use of in-house developmental resources, and no dependence on outside suppliers, all of these being very traditional advantages that SpaceX has. However, the weaknesses included a lack of business strategy, which fails to meet goals for developing the LEO economy, seeking full reimbursement of its narrowly scoped SAA costs from NASA, despite leveraging private financing of Starship, no proposed PDR on the CLD system, which fails to meet one of the primary goals of the announcement, and milestones do not objectively demonstrate technical or business progress. Its weaknesses also included its high dependence on HLS without addressing it as a risk. So once again, it just looks like that whoever put forward this proposal for SpaceX didn't do their homework. They didn't really emphasize how a Starship-based space station could fit into the LEO economy in the future, and really how all of it could be fully integrated. Instead, it simply relied on the fact that NASA chose Starship to be the human landing system for going to the moon as being enough to convince NASA that this would make a good space station as well. And if that is indeed the case, SpaceX didn't do enough work. And that is truly unfortunate if they failed on this proposal simply because they didn't do the work beforehand. By way of comparison, Northrop Grumman Space received a confidence rating of green on the technical approach because of the use of modules and systems with high technical maturity, essentially using modules that NASA already understands and uses, largely based on Northrop Grumman's existing Cygnus resupply ship. And by the way, this is what also won them the contract for the Halo habitation module for the Lunar Gateway. So we are looking essentially at a conservative approach to a new space station. However, a station like this has some obvious weaknesses, such as a lack of design description apparently, and also volume available to accommodate larger payload facilities within the proposed CLD modules. Really, if you're using space station modules that are almost identical to what you have on the ISS, it's going to cost a similar amount of money to create the same amount of habitable space as ISS has at its disposal, and it's also going to be unable to accommodate larger numbers of crew and larger construction and experiment environments. So really, this station, although perhaps technically feasible, is not very attractive as far as I'm concerned, but it still got a very high rating. And as far as its business plan, it only got a level of confidence of yellow. Now, the significant strengths included the use of existing flight hardware, obviously using the types of designs that NASA is already familiar with, which increases the likelihood of meeting its proposed CLD schedule. Its strengths also included an experienced management team, in-place development resources, and the proposed use of experienced major suppliers. But there are significant weaknesses as well, including a weak marketing strategy, a lack of experienced business development personnel, proposing very low private investment, an unsubstantiated financing plan, and no schedule provided past its initial development. It also included a minimal ability to accommodate non-NASA customer payloads at its initial operating capability. For obvious reasons, this is going to be a small station because it uses small modules, just like the ISS, and it's going to have all of the same problems that the ISS has as well, including limited living space, limited area to experiment and handle construction in, and finally, expense. This could be the SLS of private space stations, a space station based on existing technology that's going to be just as expensive as the technology was when we used it the first time around. And yet, this was one of the companies that was selected. Now, the second company that was selected was Nanoracks, and once again, I support this particular selection because Nanoracks has been working for such a long period of time on private space stations, and this was something that NASA recognized in both the technical and business plan evaluations, where they received a confidence rating of white on both. This included strengths of leveraging many technically mature designs, which increases likelihood of meeting schedules, and proposing a single launch capability to reach its initial operating configuration. Starlab can be launched by one rocket, an existing rocket that has a 5-meter fairing. You don't need a Starship to launch this thing. You don't need a next generation rocket to launch it at all. So there's a lot of confidence as far as that's concerned. Plus it has a large inflatable module, increasing the habitable space. Once again, it doesn't come close to comparing to what Blue Origin and especially SpaceX had proposed, but still it's enough for 4 astronauts to do their work. However, the weaknesses included an ambitious proposed launch date using a low technically mature inflatable habitat technology. Once again, NASA is not familiar with inflatable habitats, so they're not very confident about them. But what I really don't understand is why the business plan evaluation only got a confidence rating of white, because the significant strengths included a strong business strategy to develop the LEO economy, a very thorough and convincing marketing strategy. Not surprising for Nanoracks, they've been planning to put up a private space station, a doable private space station, for a very long time. Also, a very significant level of private investment, a very strong marketing plan that supports revenue estimates, all kinds of strengths, and there were no significant weaknesses identified, and yet they only got a level of confidence rating of white. And I have to admit, this puts the whole color-coded system that NASA had in place for this contract in question as far as I'm concerned, because Blue Origin received the same level of confidence that Starlab received. And honestly, I don't think they had as much justification for it, which I'm going to explain in just a moment. Starlab is not a thorough and comprehensive replacement for the ISS. It's just not big enough. However, it does use very doable technologies, very firmly established and understood technologies that can be launched in a single mission on existing rockets. That makes this a very strong proposal. In my opinion, stronger than what Blue Origin had. And yet, that's not what NASA came up with, even though when you read the actual description of the proposal, it doesn't seem to match up with the colors. Now, the strengths of the Blue Origin / Sierra Space proposal are many. They include a 6-person crew, providing greater access at initial operations. Also on top of that, an increased likelihood of sustainable CLD operations with a large volume and redundancy across critical systems, which provides fault tolerance and flexibility to meet customer goals. Lots and lots of positive things. Also, the use of proven Amazon logistics approach, so that might be a thing that Blue Origin is contributing to all of this. Strong external thermal control design to risk assessment, a strong emergency response plan, and a docking demonstration prior to baseline, which builds confidence in docking. And that's just a few of the advantages. But the weaknesses included low technically mature elements, including inflatable modules, there we are again, and single-person spacecraft, which are significant risks to meeting the proposed schedule, proposing a regenerative closed-loop ECLSS, which is a scale-up of existing ISS systems, so the life support is somewhat in question, and it also carries significant schedule risk and complex integration between its partners and complex launch and assembly. So lots of strengths and lots of weaknesses, which you would expect from a white confidence rating. But from the business plan, they also got a white. It includes includes an ambitious business strategy and strong, relevant experience of Blue Origin and its partners and suppliers, they really should talk a lot more about Sierra Space here, given how much they're contributing to this. Its strengths included a strong marketing plan, a significant level of private investment for the base period, a lot of positive things, but significant weaknesses, including seeking more funds than NASA stated is available, also included failing to propose business milestones with meaningful success criteria, unclear roles of its partners in raising financing. That's a big one, isn't it? Because Sierra Space raised nearly $1.5 billion on their own in private financing. Blue Origin hasn't come anywhere close to that, and yet Blue Origin once again is the leading partner here, and in my opinion, they should not be. It should be Sierra Space. But the question remains, with all of those weaknesses identified in the business plan, why did they get the same level of confidence rating that Nanoracks received? It should have been different, but it wasn't, which honestly puts the entire assessment in question as far as I'm concerned, as I already said. So did SpaceX really get a fair shake in this whole situation? Did Blue Origin and Sierra Space receive any sort of favorable treatment here? In my opinion, they didn't, because Sierra Space, at least, is providing a lot of established technology for this system, including Dream Chaser, which is going to be making journeys to the ISS this year, and also an inflatable module that's already been built. The Pathfinder version has existed for some time now, along with a lot of other established technologies. So I think this is a very good plan that requires only 3 launches to deploy, but at the same time, SpaceX can deploy a similar amount of space, actually a bit more, in 1 launch, and yet that doesn't seem to have been taken into account in this proposal. Perhaps it was just a difference of skill, and if that's the case, then SpaceX made a considerable error here, because we're talking about a fair amount of money. $160 million went to Nanoracks, $130 million went to Blue Origin, and $125.6 million went to Northrop Grumman. But it's more important than that. It's the legacy to provide a feasible replacement for the ISS that will serve mankind's needs in low Earth orbit and beyond for years to come. And if it turns out that Blue Origin, Nanoracks, or somebody else embraces that legacy and inherits it, as opposed to SpaceX simply because of a difference in salesmanship, then that is something that is really unacceptable. Now, perhaps it was an unfair treatment, and if that's the case, SpaceX should definitely do something about it. If you like what I have to say, then please subscribe to my channel, and also please check out the description if you'd like to support me in making future content like this video. So, until we have a feasible replacement, a doable replacement that will provide a better system than what ISS has given us and allow mankind to finally start expanding into the solar system, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.